Number two, or tip number two. All right, what's on the tip line? What is on the tip line? All right. So let me boom. What is tip number two is understand the mission. What do I mean by understand the mission? My second tip for helping you have a smoother transition when learning how to code is understand the mission. So understand what you're trying to solve before you actually try to solve it. Sounds like an easy concept. But what I see so many people make this mistake is they are trying to solve the problem, but they don't even know what the problem actually is. That's why I say, because if whatever you're in, you don't understand the objective that you're trying to accomplish, how are you actually going to do it? Now, you can try to throw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and it might work. Cool. But are you really learning though? Are you really learning? So how do I understand the problem? And how do you do this? So how do you do this in software development, software engineering? Yesterday at work, we had a meeting where we call it a design review. Now, I'm not telling you to have a design review when you're trying to solve, like when you're trying to learn how to code, trying to solve these, like, simple or simple problems. But what I'm telling you is that in this design review, and a lot of companies do it, but it was our team and one of the engineers who's been planning out a initiative that we have. They wrote a big document that has like all these different options. What is the objective? What we're trying to find, trying to solve. Some different ways to do it. What are the pros and the cons for each way of doing it? I bring that up because I want you to understand what the problem at hand is. So how do you do that? I want you to, in comments, write out, okay, what am I trying to solve? So I say, okay, I need to get what, let's take something simple. I want to pass in two inputs, right? Two numbers as an input. So it asks, okay, what is number one and what is number two? And I'll say for number one, I'll pass in 10. And number two, I'll pass in 50. And I want to add those two numbers that I pass in, and I want it to return to me the result. So now I could just start writing a bunch of code, but I don't know, like, what am I actually trying to do? It's a simple example, so that one makes sense, right? But I would want to say, all right, so objective or mission is, in comments, say my goal is to get number one and add it to number two and get the result and print out the result. Now, working my way up, how do I do that? So with tip number one, it was write in very small bits of code for immediate feedback. But I can map out my Ferry's gonna enjoy this, my treasure map on how, so in code, I'm writing out my plan on how I'm going to get there. So I'll say my objective is to get number one plus number two equal and print out the results of that. So now what is one level above, right? So it's actually doing the addition. So I would say, all right, so I'm going to say, all right, in this step in the comments is going to be like the actual number one plus number two and the value that's going to be. And then, so the step before that is I need to capture the values of number one and the values of number two that the person who's using my formula, my function, is putting in. So, and I haven't written any code yet. I'm just writing the comments. This is just comments that I'm writing. So I'm saying, now I need to capture what's one and capture what's two. What's number one and what's number two. And then, now that I know, so now that means that in order to get to my objective, I need to do, so my objective is to add the input of number one and the input of number two and print out that result. So it's to print out the result of number one plus number two. And so now the steps that I have to follow is, all right, capture the input from the user. And then it's going to be add the two inputs together. And then it's going to be print out the result is the final objective. So now these are just comments. I haven't written any code yet, just written out comments. So now when I'm actually ready to code, now I employ tip number one, very small bits of code for immediate feedback. So I'd say, all right, so the very first thing I'm going to do, the very first line of code I'm going to write is capture the input for number one. That's it. And if I know that works, now I'm in good shape. So once that works, the very next step is going to be for, small bits of code. I'm going to capture input for number 2. So now I should at least be able to print out what's number 1, print out what's number 2. And then the next step is from that is, all right, let's start to add. Do I need to convert my input to an integer maybe? So let me write that code. So let me write just converting input number 1 into an integer and printing that out, or checking the type of that. Bring out the type to make sure it's an integer. So now I'm like 3-4 lines in. And now I do the same exact thing for the second number. And now that I know that my types are actually numbers now, they can be added. And now I proceed to the next step where I do the addition. And I make sure that there's no issues with the addition. And now, which automatically leads me to my last step of just printing out the results of that addition that I did. So that's what I mean by understanding the mission. Map out your game plan. You gotta be like a basketball coach where you're like, showing the play, or a football coach showing the play on a clipboard. So we're gonna do that. Maybe they use iPads now, right? But anyways, like boom, 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 boom. This is what I need you to do. But that's before you actually even step on the field or on the court. So that is what I'm saying, to understand the problem before you try to solve the problem. Capiche? Capiche. All right. So that being said, that was my number 2 tip to help you ease yourself into coding so it's not a very tumultuous journey. I don't want you to be like the children of Israel, wandering through the wilderness for like 40 years and stuff like that. For a trip you can do in 13 days, right? So that's why I'm giving you these little tips. I will end up making a fuller video where I am actually showing examples of what I'm talking about, right? So that is, that's my tip, right? That is my tip. Hopefully you found that helpful and informative. We are going to get to our last 20-minute segment. Aww. I know, I'm sad about it too. But hey.
If you enjoyed the fascinating information shared in this video and you want more, be sure to hit the subscribe button to Tech Coach Ralph to be notified for new videos.